Welcome. There's plenty of space, clearly, but I appreciate it very, very much that you all came out here to talk, to listen to my interesting talk. We are two presenters. My name is Albert Kooijman. I will be doing the first and the last part of the presentation. How many of you have ever seen me before? Few. Okay, so then let me do a little bit of an intro. And I will go and take roughly about 25 minutes for that intro, so let me first explain a little bit. My talk today is about, is the Cloud PBX right for you? And you saw it actually that it was changed at the front of the room. Is voice from Microsoft right for you or something? They made the title. And that has to do something with the following. If you look at the actual text that was in the abstract, we all of a sudden started talking about the Office 365 phone system. Mary Jo Foley picked up on that. And let me actually introduce that a little bit to you because, and I will make many mistakes during this presentation by calling it by the old name. And throughout my slides, I actually noticed there is all this old name as well. But essentially what we are doing currently is we are reframing what we used to call the Cloud PBX as the phone system in Office 365. It has to do with all the other announcements that we made in the earlier talks on Monday, where we are bringing the full phone capabilities into Microsoft Teams. So we are essentially hooking up Teams also to the Skype backend and power Teams with the same capabilities that we have now in Skype for Business Online and beyond. That's what this whole talk is going to be about, so be aware. In the process, by the way, we also are renaming some other things, like, for example, when I speak about PSTN conferencing in my deck, new name, Office 365 audio conferencing. When I speak about PSTN calling, actually, it is called a calling plan, but it's not only the calling plan, it's also the capability of course, bringing the PSTN via Microsoft into your network. PSTN consumption is going to be called communications credits, and if you have PSTN conferencing and you want to pay by the minute, it's going to be called audio conferencing, pay by a minute. But this legend, so you will still see me make the mistake and use all the old terms. This legend is very important to understand. What am I going to talk to you about today? Well, the mantra of my journey in Microsoft, I started in the early 2000s, is the only constant is change. So I want to take the first 20 minutes to a little bit explain to you about why we are here with our phone capabilities as we are, and make you understand what is the revolution that we are trying to achieve. A revolution that started in 2001. We are then going to show you a more elaborate demo of certain capabilities that we are introducing into Microsoft Teams with regards to the calling capabilities. And the purpose of that is we would love to explain to you how certain things start showing up and how you stay in control over that change or that move from server to online or from online in Skype for Business Online to Teams. And I would love you to understand what is the thinking that we had behind there and essentially enter into a dialogue with you guys, how hard that might be in this big hall, but enter into a dialogue on whether that fits actually with your company and give you some strategies in order to deploy the different products and how to think about it. As I said, the only constant is change. I started in early 2000s in Microsoft. The most important thing for me was that in those years, every half a year, you would still be visited by Bill Gates, and you could present your plan to him. And the reason why I start here is because when you are looking at the evolution of communications, it all started in a meeting that we had with Bill Gates, where we wanted to do something. We wanted to do something with the telephone. When we got in front of him, what essentially happened is we said, hey, we are now having Windows, we are having Office. In those years, we just started with server and tools, as it was called. But if you actually look at your desk, there was now this PC, that part of his vision that he had delivered. But there was also this old phone. That's very hardware-centric. We had a big PBX in Microsoft. And whenever the phone would ring, we proposed to him, look, hey, if the phone rings, at the moment that the phone rings, I need to go away from my PC, I need to pick up my phone, and those two worlds are not connected. So when we went ahead to him and said, hey, Bill, there is really an opportunity here in voice, in this telephone system. I will come to the word voice, by the way, in a moment. But so we built this proposal, and we said, hey, we would love to actually buy a PBX company and have Microsoft enter into this world. I do not know if you have ever heard descriptions of how a meeting with Bill Gates is. It is not undynamic, let's call it like that. So with other words, the guy was getting more and more animated. The guy, I want to be respectful, but he was literally like almost blowing up. And so he was listening to us for a little while. And then literally what happened was like, he stopped us. He then banged his head on the table and said, guys, and for all the ladies here, there was no lady in the room, so it was not a reflection of the time, but it was literally, there were no ladies in the room. He said, guys, what is your strategy? And everyone tried to answer it, and he got more and more angry. And then he finally spoke those words that effectively are the start of everything in Microsoft that we are doing around communications. He said, our strategy is software. And that is so important to understand, because in the early 2000s, no one was ever thinking about telephony as something that makes your application essentially an endpoint, makes it the phone itself. So in other words, if you start working, what is more logical that you work and you talk to others right from within that application? And that was the journey that he set us out on. Try to rethink everything in the world of telephony as software. Don't think about hard copper wires. Don't think about a system that is separate from what is going on the desktop, but think about communications that is going on in the desktop. You can already see now where we are going, right? So that mindset. He then appointed a guy called Gurdeep Singh Pal. And Gurdeep Singh Pal actually took a look around. Now we are talking about 2002, right? And he essentially said, if you look at the communications world, all those different communications modalities that you had in those days, whether this was a PBX or a voicemail system, or even a fax, or they were all silos. If you had a video system, a video teleconferencing, it was H323, but it was separate. So he said, no, we do not only need to think about communications as software, but I'm going to build from scratch. I'm completely freed up. I'm going to build from scratch a new communications platform that breaks down those silos. In 2006, I wrote the first press release where we, as Microsoft, used the word unified communications. And it sounds unimaginable, but at that point in time, it was not a very often used term. A year later, it was. But that was the first time that we said, hey, as Microsoft, we want to build a unified communications platform. We went to a show called VoiceCon, and we said, hey, we have the best thing since sliced bread, right? Something that is also constant that we always think that we do that. But nevertheless, so we went to that show and said, you can get rid of all your phones. We have something new for you, unified communications platform. And in 2007, we released that particular product. It was called Office Communication Server 2007. And in Office Communication Server 2007, we were very proud because we were actually in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and we were a leader. So you should realize that the moment that we actually were in market and we were very gangbusters about it, hey, this is the most beautiful product that we had ever built, that when the reception of guys like yourselves was like, hey, this is not really what we are looking for. We actually want unified communications, but we also want a phone. We want a normal PBX. And between 2007, Office Communication Server 2007 and 2007 R2, and until 2010, Link Server 2010, our whole team of, at that time, 400 developers was building features that essentially closed the gap of what was called the voice RFP, so that we could, on premises, offer a product that at least would have parity with those PBXs that were in use until that moment. And we went a little bit overboard there, because on the one hand side, we had built this beautiful platform that was a unified communications platform, but then all of a sudden we started talking about the phone a lot. And again, there was a little course correction, because you guys essentially told us what we really need is that phone system that you're building, that PBX that you're building, but we also want to have all that other stuff. So, and that was this Link Server 2013 that we built. Now, by that time, the world had completely changed. What were the things that had changed? This was the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. So the world had become mobile. The world had become very internet-centric. And I can tell you one thing. The stuff that we built did not work on a mobile. It did not work on a mobile for two reasons. So on the one hand side, it kept your cell phone on all the time and essentially drained your battery in no time. I do not know if you guys remember Link Mobile. It was a most horrifying client. And there was also a second part of it, like so it kept your battery and drained your battery, but it was also based on SIP. And one of the things that happens was that at that moment when you start talking SIP, I do not know if you know this session initiation protocol, that voice over IP is very often used in voice over IP, right? At that very moment that it starts talking, it is very talkative. And if you have crappy networks, like here in the United States, you're out of luck. The amount of messages that got lost on Link Mobile 2010, it was horrifying. So I remember that in 2010, actually it was in 2009, I went to my management together with another guy, Stefan, and we said, hey, this needs to change. We cannot use SIP anymore over mobile. So we started designing a new API that was essentially an internet protocol-based API. It was based on HTTP. And I'm telling you all these things because if you're looking at what we are building currently, that is essentially what is happening. So we are switching protocols from SIP to HTTP. The first clients where that serviced was in the new mobile clients. This was the UC Web API. And this UC Web API was not only for mobile, but it also could be deeply integrated into web pages. I do not know if you are familiar with this term called WebRTC, but we worked very, very hard with the W3C and all the companies in there to make it possible that essentially every web page could be a start and a stop of an audio call, of a video call. So what you see here is this whole evolution of where we essentially proposed to buy a PBX, then found out, okay, hey, actually we can do this radically different as software. We built this horizontal platform where you can essentially do any communications modality from text to voice to video to sharing. And then we said, okay, hey, this was all used to be based on SIP. We are switching all this SIP protocol out, and we are going towards web-based, mobile-based technology. The next thing that happened was we bought Skype. In 2007, I think it was it maybe a year earlier? We bought Skype. At that point in time, Skype was very big, but what was more important to us was that Skype essentially has an infrastructure to be a global carrier. All around the world, Skype consumer has ingress and egress points where you can make phone calls. So we, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, we made a calculated bet, and we said, we want to be a global telco. Very interesting, because the moment that we bought Skype, we immediately got letters from governments from all across the world who were saying, if you want to be a telco, let me tell you what it means to be a telco. And they listed out all the specifications of regulatory stuff that we needed to do, all the taxation stuff. So I think we are still working on it very slowly, on making sure that all the stuff that we built for Skype also is compliant with all those rules. But when we announced on Monday that we brought PSTN conferencing, or what is it now called? Office 365 audio conferencing, to Teams, we went live in over 90 countries overnight. So we have telephony capabilities for conferencing in 90 countries. We are essentially now becoming a large global telco. So Skype is interesting because of all its consumer cachet and the beautiful stuff that is happening there. But what was really important to us is that we essentially acquired a lot of expertise, a Skype infrastructure that could allow us to become a global telco. When you become a global telco, you have to build a lot of infrastructure. So that's where the whole integration with Office 365 started, and with Azure. So we now are in data centers across the world. We now have a very scalable architecture. But the thing that we are doing at this very moment is we are essentially bringing Skype for Business onto that new infrastructure that we built on the basis of all the work and the learnings that we had from Skype. So there is essentially, when we are talking about bringing calling to Teams, there is a client now, another client, the Teams client, that hub for collaboration as a team, the hub for teamwork. We are bringing the calling capabilities to Teams by hooking Teams up to that Skype backend. And that's essentially what is happening now. So what we announced on Monday was, hey, things are, according to us, changing again. I spoke to you about that we wanted it to be software. We wanted it to be seamless between all the modalities. We wanted to actually offer enterprise-grade telephony. We want to offer this on a global scale. But there is new changes coming. And those new changes are very much around how the way how people work. And that is essentially what is the whole core essence of why we started building Microsoft Teams. We wanted to essentially tap into that new development where people start working more in a collaborative spirit and essentially bring everything together into a new client in Office 365, Microsoft Teams, and enable them to no longer just make calls, but essentially make a call in the continuum of all the other work that they're doing, communications as software. We also want to make sure that we are no longer essentially losing the context of what happens before a call and what happens after a call. So there is nothing more logical that you, when you are working in your team, in your channel, and you're talking to others, that there would be that context of that you made that phone call in that conversation. So with other words, Teams is becoming the repository of everything. Calls are not only calls, but truly in the spirit of this unified communications vision that we had. We are enabling everyone to go seamlessly from an audio call to a meeting. And in that meeting, you will be able to do video. You will be able to share stuff on a one-on-one basis or with the whole team. You will be able to go back if you had a meeting. You heard Lori speak about that. And you can see the recording of that particular meeting inside your Teams client. and you can listen to it. You can read it, because, as you know, we are bringing transcription to Teams and to the meetings in Teams. So with other words, this communications is evolving into what Satya Nadella dubbed as intelligent communications. I spoke about the whole dimension of more collaborative Teams work. But there is another part of the strategy which is also extremely important that was repeated over and over again on Monday when we did our keynote. And that development is around the digitization of the workspace. So with other words, if you are creating content, whether this is a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, whether this is an email, or whether this is a phone call or a meeting, that content actually contains value for your enterprise. And what we are working on in this concept of intelligent communications is that we actually capture all that content. That we capture that for you, and we build this massive repository of knowledge that you have in your company. And that repository of content that we have, we make it accessible. We're building this API, this application programming interface, that you can query that content, and you can learn from other stuff that has been created by a colleague of yours, just by essentially being able to query it and by asking, hey, do we have any information on this or that? That asking, of course, you need to know what to ask. So we are working on integrating, and you saw some prototypes of that as well, not prototypes, some first incarnations, let's call it like that, in this question and answer bot that Lori showed during her keynote. So where you essentially, you can ask a certain thing and a bot will answer. So there is some intelligence that is going on there. And that is just a text. So I ask a question. If I find the right answer in the documentation that I have, then I give that as a response. If I did not get it, I will start as an artificial intelligence, mining the other data that they have and suggesting other content until the people actually say, yes, that is the content that I was looking for. Very much an evolution of the search that you know when you are Googling something, or you are using Bing, of course, but those type of things. It becomes more and more smart. The real revolution now, what is happening, is that this is not only about text. In the coming years, this is also going to be about audio and about video. Just a moment ago, I spoke about the meetings being recorded. In the Skype meeting broadcast, and also in Teams, you will be able to essentially record the meeting, post it inside the team or capture it inside the team, and then our speech services platform will kick in. It will start analyzing that, what has been spoken, it will analyze who has spoken, and it will transcribe everything in there into text that you can search. It is that same platform around the speech services that has also translation capabilities. So we currently, Skype meeting broadcasts are translated into 9 languages on demand, even in real time or close to real time. That is one example of how this capturing of audio and of video in very high fidelity is going to be absolutely critical, and how we are effectively giving our resources that we have around artificial intelligence and democratize it in the sense that you all can consume that. This is not only our plan with meetings. This is also possible if you feel that you need to record your audio. Again, you have the choice there, or the end user will have the choice. But we will be able to record it. We will be able to transcribe it. And you will thereafter be able to, hey, I spoke about this with someone some little while ago. You will, just like you do now in OneNote, you can type it in and it will do a phonetic search, or it will do a text search. It will find the stuff that you spoke about. Artificial intelligence will become so smart that it will extract what are the action items that you agreed on, and will do the summary for you. All those changes are happening now. And all those changes are already in parts and pieces of our product, like I spoke about OneNote being able to do things like that already, but that will come all to Teams. And in order to do that, you not only need to essentially build this in artificial intelligence, you need to build great user software, like, for example, Skype for Business and like Teams, and you need to capture that content with as highest fidelity as possible. So in other words, when we are speaking about Skype room systems, that also will be able, by the way, to do Microsoft Teams meetings, because it's all based on the same backend, ultimately. So at that very moment, what our attention is going about is to be able to capture the audio input from the people who are speaking in a meeting room in a very high quality. So we are releasing specifications to our hardware partners that we say, hey, this microphone really needs to be capable of people speaking at the same time. So here in a nutshell, that nutshell took about 25 minutes, I gave you an introduction of my whole world in Microsoft. I've always worked in this team and tried to make you understand, like, why are we doing this thing called intelligent communications? Why are we doing this thing of bringing that to a work hub, the hub application that you have as in Microsoft Teams? That is, if you are looking at, hey, is a Cloud PBX from Office 365, from Microsoft, is that the right thing for you? I think you should also realize that with it, it is not only dial tone that we are providing, but it is essentially this vision that we have that there is content that actually is created when you have a phone call. And that content will be actually of value to your enterprise if you can disclose that content in more efficient ways. And that is what we are trying to do with intelligent communications. Strategy clear so far? Then let's actually take a look further of what essentially we are trying to do in getting there. First of all, we now have 3 options to essentially deploy Skype, Skype for Business. We have the Skype for Business server, and we have Skype for Business in online, and we are integrating the whole Skype backend and all the calling capabilities in Microsoft Teams. Across the board, they have the same type of capabilities to start with. However, going forward, our focus is very much on bringing those richer experiences into Teams. Why? Because it is the cloud power, the power in the cloud, like into artificial intelligence speech services, that we need in order to actually get this done. So if you're looking at why choose Microsoft and why bet on a Microsoft platform, there's a couple of basics, right? So on the Skype for Business side, you will look at the magic quadrant of Gartner and say, ah, that's fantastic. You will say, well, actually, it's just Cisco and Microsoft left, so I have to choose one of the two. Actually, you can have an affinity for us as well. All those things are extremely important. And of course, we can scale with you. If your company is global, we can scale with you on a global basis. But essentially, what we are trying to say is with our intelligent communications vision, we are going to go beyond what we are offering as simple dial tone. So in other words, we are trying to offer you the phone functionality that you need. We learned this big thing between 2007 and 2010. When we are talking about features, there's a long, long to-do list of making sure that in the coming months we light up things like the auto attendant and the stuck here in my sentence, calling groups and call park and all those things. We are working on those because we know that you need those features. Maybe not for everyone, but you need those features. And those features will come to online, and we will continue chipping away on all those scenarios where we currently are still working on. But the key thing is that we are trying to build it in such a way that we deeply integrate it into all our software, that we enable you to deeply integrate it also in your web applications, and that ultimately we bring this value. And that's what we call here on this slide, the voice that you want, that we bring all this value of intelligent communications to your company. Now, without ado, I want to ask Mark to come up here and essentially present you the calling capabilities in Microsoft Teams.
Thanks, Albert. Hello? Yep, there we go. So I'm Mark Potier. I'm a Principal Program Manager Lead on Microsoft Teams. My team covers all of the people, presence, and calling capabilities in Teams. I think Albert gave us like a really good sort of history lesson on how we got here, and what I like to do is show you how we're moving forward. So all the capabilities that we're taking from Skype for Business and bringing them into Microsoft Teams. Some of this is a little bit of a repeat of what we did with Lori a few days ago, but we have more time today and we can really focus in on the calling features. So I'll show you some stuff that we didn't show actually, which will be some new things too. When we started off with Microsoft Teams and thinking about how we bring Skype for Business in, we really started by thinking about the relationships that people build, and we wanted to make sure that all the contacts that have been created and that you've created in Skype for Business are carried over. And it's really sort of humbling to look at how people use features across Skype for Business and how they've developed their habits over time. Because we've been able to see that there's actually quite a few people that have hundreds or thousands of different contacts that they've entered in over the years. And this really creates a really rich environment for them to be able to reach out to their customers or their colleagues and know exactly where to connect into an organization, how to navigate that. And so the contact section is going to be brought right into Teams here. Whoops, let's see. It's a little janky up here, so we're going to have some fun with this. So the contact section has been added to chat. And what's nice about this is that all of your contacts that were once in Skype for Business will just be imported right into Microsoft Teams. And this will happen automatically when we release these features. A lot of the features I'll be showing you today, incidentally, are in preview. So they're not quite out in the final releases yet. What this does is it shows you all the groups that you've created. It shows you all the contacts you've organized in those. And it allows you to click in and continue a conversation with folks. Now, some people misinterpreted some of the stuff that we said on Monday. We're not carrying over all the chats that were once in Skype for Business and bringing them over. We're just bringing over the contacts at this point. So the conversations that you'll be having here really will just be new conversations that you're initiating within Microsoft Teams. And you can pick them up and basically carry on. The other thing that we did was we had separate presence models between Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams. And this caused a lot of confusion for people who were running this in sort of a dual use mode. And because we've been dogfooding this for quite a little while at Microsoft. And you'd end up with situations where people would appear to be available, but they were really in a meeting, and so they were being called or they were being chatted with, and it was creating some confusion. So we took that and we unified the overall presence model and made sure that there's a single presence now that's being reported up. And all the different capabilities that were available in Skype for Business are capabilities that we intend to build into Teams as well. So if you're in Germany, for example, and you have privacy implications around presence, we'll be able to cover those. Some other things that we've done is we've also looked at calling, and that was a big ask from a whole bunch of our different customers, right? They wanted a single application where you could come in and you could do all of your collaboration and communications right there. And that's part of the value proposition of having a hub for teamwork and collaboration. So interesting story about the calls tab. So last time I did this a couple days ago, I was in the middle of my demo and some fellow audience members decided to give me a call, which was really cool because it demonstrated that our platform actually worked. And it was actually a little challenging because it really wasn't part of the script. So we're going to get some audience participation today, I'm sure. But I'd like to queue it up, actually, and get somebody to call me at some point. So just hold on before you start dialing. The things that we have in the Calls tab or in the Calls app is really all the calling functionality that you'd accept in Skype for Business, right? So you have your contacts, your history, your voicemail, you have a dialer. We have phone number, obviously a phone number that's been assigned to you. This is the same phone number that's been assigned to you if you had Skype for Business Online. So as an IT professional, when you deploy Microsoft Teams, your users will just get this automatically. You don't have to reassign numbers. You don't have to do anything. It's just going to work, which is great. So in the experience that we built out, and the one that we really wanted to build to make it easy to use for you, is that we created a concept of speed dial, which is just kind of an area that I can quickly click on to place a call. And you can customize this with as many contacts as you'd like. And then we have suggested contacts, which are contacts that call you frequently that you might want to add in there as well, or ones that you might have in your meeting requests coming up. So it's a pretty efficient way of kind of diving back into calls and trying to build this up along the patterns that you normally would use. History is sort of everything that you would expect as well. So it's going to be your incoming and outgoing calls that are all listed here. And voicemail is much of the same thing, where you can click into a voicemail and you can see the transcript and also play back the content. So it's all there at your fingertips. It's all very easily findable, and we badge everything so that you can quickly find it for new things. So one of the things that we didn't show was like outbound calling, and obviously this is a fully functional dialer, so we can harken back to the days of 1876 when you had to actually dial numbers and enter in a phone number. Let's see, 979 1120. And place a call. So this is going to be an outbound call to the cell phone that I have up here. Which just gets picked up right here. So we do have outbound calling. It all works. It's all PSTN based. So all that will function just as you expect.
I'm sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet.
Yep, because it's a demo tenant. So there you have it. So that's one example of outbound calling. Inbound calling, this is where I actually need somebody to give me a call. So is there anyone that's willing to call me at 425-578-0158? Don't leave me hanging, please, someone. How about this person up here? Can you do it? You have your phone, I see it. Oh, somebody did it, great. Oh, 2 calls, all right. Stop. All right, we're stress testing the system. This is awesome. Okay, so we can pick up one of those calls, and now we're in it. Hi, did you hang up? Oh, we have some. Here, let's mute this. Darn it. Okay, well, that's an incoming call. So that works. As you saw, that came into Microsoft Teams, obviously. But not all of you may want to be using Microsoft Teams, right? And when you deploy this, you may end up in a situation where you have a portion of your company that's using Skype for Business still because they have special requirements that aren't quite met in Microsoft Teams yet. So for example, if you have administrators and executives and there's a boss-admin relationship that you have to manage there, that's not in Microsoft Teams yet, so you might want to wait for a little bit until that arrives. In those cases, those users, you can, through policy, you can control whether they receive their calls in Microsoft Teams or they receive them in Skype for Business. So you can decide where the calls are going to arrive and what client they get to use to answer those calls. And that guarantees that your workflows are all going to be maintained. The thing that you can also do in the policy, which is great, is that you can give user choice. So if you're unsure about which percentages of your population are actually using these advanced features and which ones aren't, you can send them an email and say, hey, this is how you change your preference so that you can decide whether you want to get your calls in Microsoft Teams or Skype for Business. So the person who, I don't know if you saw your phone number and you recognized it, but if they could give me a call back in just a second here, I'm going to show you how you switch this. So you come into options and you hit calls, and then we have a preferred calling application. So we're just going to change this in real time and switch it over to Skype for Business. And now if somebody could give me a call back. Anyone? Oh, yes, several people. Awesome. I can go ahead and pick that up again. Right? So now we're on a call, and that all came into Skype for Business directly. So that's an example of how we can just switch the routing and direct it appropriately to however the user has it configured. And you can configure that all by IT policy as well, and make sure that your populations are receiving calls where you want them. So it should give you some confidence in being able to roll this out and trial it and make sure that, like, if you reach a point where for some reason something's not working for you, you can always revert back. Or if you really like the features and you find that your users are really happy with them, then you can just augment that pool and continue growing it out. So, and the product is going to get richer and richer as we go. So that's kind of interop. I think it's actually a really cool feature. I mean, being able to do that is, and doing it in real time like that has been quite the engineering feat on our side. So we're pretty happy with that. On the mobile side, we have the full application as well. So switch out of this. And so, you have the entire mobile application that's available to you. You can scan through your activity. Obviously, you can do chats. You can look at all your team activity. We talked about meetings in the past. We also have calls now. So within this, you can also go ahead and, for example, Maybe this is an opportunity for me to call somebody back. So you can go ahead and you can tap on the dialer. Oh, excuse me, fat thumbing this apparently. And you can go ahead and place a call outbound PSTN2. So what this will do is this will actually, when you place the call, it will place the call through our services. So the person who's getting rung will see your work number. They won't see your personal number. And so if you're somebody in sales, for example, and you want to maintain a business identity that's unique, then you can go ahead and do that from within the application too. There's one more example of calling that I wanted to show you. Switching back to the PC here, which is on the web. So once again, a lot of these are in preview, but within the web, we don't have any plugins or anything else. This is running in Edge, and we're also looking at doing this in Chrome too, but that's coming. What you can do from here is you can also just place outbound calls. So exactly as you were using it in the desktop application. So this is all just running right within the web browser. So for here, for example, if I wanted to call Emily back, I could go ahead and hit call. And once again, it's coming in over here.
Please leave a message for
Emily Braun.
She still doesn't have her
After the
voicemail
tone, please
message. Oh, she does.
message.
Okay, we'll hang up on that. So that's some of the capabilities that we've built in, and I mean, this is great. You can deploy it in the web. You can also go ahead and deploy it as a desktop app. You have the capabilities to be able to control where those calls are going to go. You have interop all working. You'll have your contacts that are going to be imported, and you have pretty much all the capabilities you need for most information workers to be able to handle all their call load from here. So this is just the start. Like, we feel really that the intelligent communications piece is going to light up as we add more and more capabilities. We're going to hit Skype for Business parity. That's the next step. And then after that, it's going to be a whole slew of new features that will likely be targeting all the intelligent communications vision that you saw earlier in the week with Lori. And that becomes things like catching a voice or recording the entire conversation, being able to do real-time transcription, real-time translation, things like that. And it really, we're excited to see this come to life, because I think it's going to be a huge improvement over what we've had, and our ability to ship features at a much faster pace through Teams is just phenomenal. So hope you enjoy that. Thank you very much. Hand it back over to Albert.
Yep. All right. So far? Okay. Now, how many of you are an IT admin? Few. Not too many. Of course, now the section is actually, hey, what do I do with this? And I want to say something impolite, but nevertheless, it's being transcribed, so I'm going to be careful there. I want to recap a few of the key takeaways of what Mark was saying. And those key takeaways are, hey, the products of Skype for Business and Teams, they can work side by side, and you can choose what to move at what point in time, or you can actually have end users choose what they want to use, because they are all powered by the same backend, and therefore they essentially can just, as clients, coexist. Teams, however, is of course something that runs in the cloud. But we also have a Skype for Business server. So let me actually first talk about that very first part, namely that products can coexist. I want to talk a little bit more in detail for those who did not attend Dan Strader's session about Skype for Business server. Teams is wonderful. Skype for Business Online, fantastic. Server is actually still the best. Let's be very honest about that. So what we are doing is that in the whole new upgrade cycle in 2019, the 2019 Office upgrade cycle, we are still going to release Skype for Business Server 2019. Just like that, there will be a new Exchange server, there will be a new SharePoint server. The whole backend of Office, essentially in Office 365, will be refreshed. And of course, also on-prem. So that includes a new version of Office, by the way. What does that mean for Skype for Business Server 2019? It means, most of all, for you guys, that there will be a new cycle of essentially 5 plus 5 years of mainstream support and extended support. It means, of course, that there are people working on it to constantly still improve the product and make sure that all the bugs and all the stuff that is needs fixing, that it needs fixing and it's being updated. It also means that we are still going to do work on our Skype for Business client. It is going to be part of Office 2019. That's one thing. However, there are also going to be changes. The things that we will be working on the most are very much around the whole admin experience and about essentially bringing cloud value also to on-premises. And those cloud value I will go into a bit more detail in a moment. But they are essentially options for you to start using the things that we spoke about of the intelligent communications in little parts and pieces, even in server. What does that mean, if this clicker works? If you have currently Link Server 2013 or Skype for Business Server 2015, as long as you're willing to upgrade to the right version of Windows and SQL, namely Windows Server 2016 and SQL Server 2016, you can upgrade your server to the latest version 2019. And then with that, we are introducing a few new things. One of the new things is that if you want to do diagnostics of your calls and you have people that are sometimes on-prem and sometimes in the cloud, you need to have one single way of analyzing what is actually going on with those users. And that's why we are building essentially a capability to see holistically not only the users that you have in the cloud, but also the users that you have on-prem in an admin portal that actually is in the cloud. And there you can then see whether the call was made over Teams or over the Skype for Business client and using Skype for Business Server 2019 or Skype for Business Online, what actually went on with that call. So there is essentially a portal that is aware of all calling that is going to take place. We are going to put a lot of effort in beefing up all the online capabilities around what we call internally voice apps, like for example, voicemail, the auto attendant, call queues. All that functionality, we are essentially investing in mostly in the cloud solution. So what we think is more logical that to give you the option to actually start leveraging those enhanced voice apps when we run them in the cloud. So in other words, if you are deploying Skype for Business Server and you would like to use the next version of, for example, our voicemail, the next version of our call queues, or the next version of our auto attendant, at that very moment, you can start using those apps as cloud apps. And with that, for example, if you have an auto attendant and it actually has TTS in there, text-to-speech, it will have the best and most beautiful voices that we are building into our services platform, speech services platform in the cloud. So in other words, there is benefits for you to actually start moving those parts and pieces of the voice workload into the cloud. What you need to do for that, and that is a very critical element that you need to be willing to do, is essentially bring your users into a unified authentication system. And that authentication system essentially is hooking up Active Directory with Azure Active Directory and essentially have this new modern authentication, as we call it, that allows you to sign in not only against on-prem, but also, of course, against those services that we have in the cloud. We are already having that in preview, in Skype for Business Server 2015. But if you are looking at this, start trying that out now. Try to essentially see how authentication across the different workloads works. So where other servers are taking this approach of, okay, hey, you can move workloads like email into the cloud and OneDrive, etc. In this particular case, we are also saying like, hey, we actually are going to split off certain elements of Skype for Business Server and we are going to allow you to run them in the cloud. On voice, specifically, those are especially the voice apps that we are talking about. And we believe that by doing that, we give you this stepping stone of essentially simplifying your deployment by essentially leveraging the assets that we have in the cloud. So this whole hybrid construct where you have certain users on-prem and certain users in the cloud is going to be extended, like certain users who are still on-prem still can use certain functionalities that we are building as voice in that cloud. And I think that that actually will help you a great deal. It will simplify your life if you're an IT admin. I spoke about the products can coexist. Now, is the Cloud PBX right for you? Is the Office 365 phone system right for you? Here I would like to go a little bit more in detail. And this is stuff where I need to be careful to not reveal too much about, okay, hey, these are all our plans and this is when they are coming. That we will officially do via the Office 365 roadmap. But I first want to talk about, before you start thinking about, okay, hey, what is the right product for me or for my users, that you need to start thinking about it, that you are the one who is deciding it, and you need to then decide which users actually fit the best the capabilities that we offer. And then essentially start adding this cloud value that I spoke about at your leisure. So let's first talk about which users are actually the right users to actually be moving over. Like Mark suggested earlier, you can have a central policy and say, okay, hey, I'm going to decide for my users. The other option is, okay, hey, I'm going to leave it to the user and they can decide whether they are going to use Teams as their client in case they are Skype for Business Online users or Skype for Business. You do that typically, and this is some work that we did with UC Strategies, a consulting company. You have to look at what type of users you have. This clicker, when I go too far away, it doesn't click, so let me actually explain this. So when you are looking at your users, not all users are the same. So when you are determining what is your strategy for migrating people from one to the other, you actually need to take a look at what are the capabilities that in the voice PBX that user needs. And this is one taxonomy of how to look at your users. So you can have, for example, people who are field people, who are always on the move outside of the office. They essentially use their cell phone or Wi-Fi over their mobile. Their mobile client is the first client. Or you can have an ordinary desk worker, an IW as we call them, an information worker. Let me actually click a little bit down on that. So once you start looking at your company, you will discover what is the percentages of those types of users that you have. And you will find that your company will be made up of users that are having very different profiles. So what you typically do in that particular case is you take out a group that you think have the need for features that actually fit what we are offering at that particular point in time. So with other words, if you have an information worker, as I called it just a moment ago, this is typically a person that works at his or her desk. They are typically, the normal people in the office. If you look at what the features are that they need around the telephony, so they use still a lot of email, they actually use their phone, but not too much. They actually have voicemail. When they are talking to customers, they have a single line or maybe very limited multi-line appearance that they call. They don't typically use a speakerphone, so they have an ordinary phone. Maybe they are having some CRM involved. And then you start seeing already, hey, this is actually, if you look at the capability sets of what Microsoft is offering in Skype for Business Online versus on-prem or in Skype for Business that is built into Teams, these are the capability sets that I think with high confidence that I can fulfill. So with other words, if you go through your profile of all the different users that you have, you can score them, like I did here with the little Harvey balls as they are called, where you can say, oh, actually, if you look at the contact center, this whole Teams thing or the Skype for Business thing is actually still very lacking on that particular point. So don't let us move over contact center. So I'm giving you here a suggestion of how to go about it. You have a list of stuff that we are building into our product. That list is ever expanding, and at any moment in time, you can do an assessment of these are the user groups, the usage profiles in my company that I have, and you can actually score them. And you can say, okay, in this particular case, let me start with the people who are working on this information processing, this information worker that I spoke about. Let me then look at the administrators and let me look at the admins, because I think they will be next. And let me actually absolutely do the contact center workers at last. So these are the types of strategies. It is not, is the Cloud PBX right for you, a black and white switch. It is not a big bang, but it is a gradual process. Then, of course, you need to take a look as well at our backend. What is the server that we have, and what is the Skype for Business Online that we have? What is the Teams that we have, and how does that evolve? I could have given a whole long list with detailed features, and most likely all of you will start going on our TechNet and start looking at all the capabilities, and you start looking at the roadmap. But it's important to understand you essentially have 4 things to consider. First of all, we believe that Skype for Business Server, even also as it is now, and of course it will be even better with Server 2019, we are pretty good. About half of our users in Skype for Business are still on-prem. It goes down by 1 to 2% every month, but that's still a considerable amount of users that is on-prem. It also means that the other half is actually using Skype for Business Online already. And you can see that in Skype for Business Online, there are certain things that are not as extensive or as built out, like for example APIs. Given the fact that we are moving to Teams, we decided not to release the Skype for Business Online APIs. In the cloud, we are moving to Teams. So therefore, APIs will be actually released for Teams, so that when you build extensibility apps, that those Teams apps will be able to be carried forward. If you look at Skype for Business Server, we have things there like ethical walls. We have things there like compliance recording. Not necessarily as Microsoft capabilities that we offer, but also offer through partners. If you're looking at what we have currently in Skype for Business Online, that is not as extensive in online as it is in on-prem. And that's actually a good example of when you are looking at what is coming in Teams. We have a certain set of capabilities that we are introducing in this calendar year. And there's a whole set of capabilities that we have planned for the next fiscal year, where we are working with our partners to actually complete our portfolio and to provide them with the right APIs. Right APIs, for example, for contact center, right APIs for compliance. Plus, we are building a lot more functionality. When I spoke about call groups what about the auto attendant? What about call park? What about multi-line appearance? What about shared line appearance? All those features are being built into Teams and will start showing up in the course of the next calendar year. And most importantly, of course, we have this vision of intelligent communications. So with other words, if you're looking at where Teams is going, there will be a whole set of capabilities that actually will only come to our cloud offer and will be only able to be consumed if you're moving from server to the cloud. Now, if you are in this Cloud PBX world, the next question is about, hey, how do I actually get a freaking phone call into this particular system? That is a very interesting question. There is a very detailed session about that by our friend Nikolai. Maybe he had that session already, I do not know, but I suggest you take a look at it. Let me give you, in that sense, a little bit of a high-level overview. And that high-level overview of how to actually get the PSTN ingress and egress into your system is something that is extremely important to understand. Like I said, we have this ambition to become a global telco, so ultimately one day you will be able to buy in most of the countries in the world a phone line as part of your Office 365 subscription with dialing minutes from Microsoft or from our partners that we work with, because essentially we are still working very closely, of course, together with all those carriers, or essentially with the telecom wholesale. But that is not the case So in Skype for Business Server, you have got a lot of flexibility, right? So you can essentially have your PBX and your gateway, you have your mediation server, and you can get a phone call into your system relatively straightforward. Of course, it requires some studying, but in Skype for Business Server, essentially you are able to get your PSTN via a gateway or via an SBC, and you then hook that up to your mediation server and you are in business. And it also means that when you are doing phone calls, all your calls essentially are staying within your network, right? So if you do a person inside your company calling another person, it stays on net, as we call it. And for those people, essentially all those people are homed in on-premises. Once we started looking at these hybrid solutions, we actually had different ways of doing it as well. We have people who are effectively homing users both in on-prem as well as in online. Now you want to be able to have those two people talk to each other. So we essentially have then a server homing a certain set of people, and you have an online Skype for Business instance homing another set of people. Both are your users in your company. Typically, what you do there is you use this on-premises connectivity via hybrid, as we call it. So essentially, you have the users that can still use their mediation server and the gateway, and you can have Microsoft PSTN Calling. Given the fact that those are two completely different PSTN systems, the one big difference is that at that very moment when one user calls the other user, it essentially makes that connection if they are in different worlds via the PSTN network, and you will be charged minutes for that particular call. But that is a solution where you essentially have this hybrid solution. Now, when you start moving users into the cloud, and you, for example, have this unluck that you are living in a country where we are not offering PSTN calling, at that very moment you can use the cloud connector to essentially bring the PSTN that you buy from your carrier into our cloud. You do that via the Cloud Connector Edition. So your users are still in online, but at that very moment that you actually want to be able to make a phone call, you still can leverage the PSTN that you have from your provider. So typically, in that particular case, you are using this cloud connector and you are hooking it up to, in those countries where we don't have PSTN calling or where you might have a better deal money-wise from your carrier than Microsoft is offering you, you essentially can use the CCE. What we really want you all, of course, to do is buy the phone minutes from us. And that's actually the next scenario. So where you have Skype for Business online, typically when you are able, have the liberty to start a greenfield, you don't need to take care of old PBXs that you want to interface with. At that very moment, you just buy the PSTN calling from us, and you essentially have users that use our capabilities. And of course, when they are then talking to each other, they are not going to go, essentially, they're staying within our network, right? So, and it's all part of your subscription as such. That is the capability that we are also now bringing to Teams. In the former case, you are using Skype for Business as your client. In the next case, where all these capabilities, Mark said just a second ago, everything that Skype for Business Online can do, by this year, you will be able to do also in Teams. That's what everyone is working on extremely hard. And therefore, you will be able to do those things in Teams as well as in Skype for Business. And it's more a matter of choice of which endpoint you would like to use. With other words, if you want to use the Teams client or whether you want to use the Skype for Business client. Now, if you're looking forward to next year, then we will start building all those new features, those extended features, etc. There are, of course, still countries that we do not offer PSTN calling. So one of the things that is pretty obvious to me, and it should be pretty obvious to you, that for those countries, we will actually offer the capability of you hooking up your carrier without cloud. I don't have a lot more detail to talk about in this particular thing at this particular time on how to do that, but it is essentially a commitment from our side that it's not only our Microsoft PSTN calling that you will be able to deploy. Go to the next. In wrapping up and leaving some time for questions and answers, we'd love you to go to Teams. If that was not clear, we actually think that we will be able to offer all the voice capabilities that we have in Teams. But if you're now truly looking at, okay, hey, what do I actually need to do? Teams or Skype for Business client, the underlying infrastructure underneath it is, with regards to your networking environment, is not much different from one client to the other. So when you are essentially talking about, so what do I need to do? You will still have the same things that you need to do in order to get your network ready, to get your infrastructure ready, in order to be able to host an infrastructure that essentially is using calling over an Ethernet or Wi-Fi connection. If you are not using Skype for Business voice capabilities, but you are using Skype for Business for meetings, you can choose to move when you want to move your meetings, because we essentially will make it possible, for example, that our meeting clients, like for example the room systems, will be able to join a Teams meeting or will be able to join a Skype for Business meeting, depending on whoever was the organizer of one or the other. If you actually are looking at voice, take a very considerate approach to start piloting all the stuff that we are releasing over the coming weeks, over the coming months, because it's going extremely fast. And being part of the preview will actually allow you to, for those users that you select that are the right users, allow you to experience firsthand all those innovations that we are bringing to this particular product. So that is in a nutshell. On TechNet, there is a very big article about how your migration strategies could be, or how your coexistence strategies could be, but those are the advices that we want to give from our side. And that moves me to the next point, Q&A. There are microphones here at the front of every row. If you have any questions, please let me know. And Mark, if you
Get a mic on?
go ahead.
Yeah, when do you expect to have feature parity between the cloud and the on-premise solutions? Full feature parity.
That's an interesting question, and we have always been off with our predictions, so I'm asked not to speak about that. and this is the honest answer, right? So it is our intention to actually complete our journey with regards to reaching parity in the near foreseeable future, but it's a lot of work. So we are still wrapping up, like for example, releasing call queues and ORKA to Skype for Business Online. That will still be completed, and then we effectively will hook up all those apps that we are building to Teams and to the new Skype backend.
Well, one of the main things that concerns me is E911 in the U.S. proper.
Yep.
And the laws and everything around that.
It's coming sooner than later, rather than later. So that one is high on our list. So
we already have, so we do have E911 support in Microsoft Teams already as well. So that was one of the compliance things that we had to ship in the first version.
That's using the static arrangement.
That is using
That's
the
correct.
static point. That's right. Dynamic E911 is on the
static
as well.
E91.
Yeah.
We are working on the rest as well.
Okay.
But it's high on our priority
Sorry,
list because we
I don't mean to be cutting you off over and over again. I apologize.
Next.
So we're heavily invested in Skype for Business for the enterprise.
On-prem
However,
or
we can't
online?
get rid of all of the other gear, so to speak, until we do contact centers. So it's good to see call queues and whatnot are coming. When can I expect to replace my contact center with Skype or Teams in the cloud?
To be very honest, never. And this may sound very crazy, because if we are talking about contact center, I always compare it to Tetris. What you can expect is that if you have call queues and response groups in on-prem, right? At that very moment, you have a basic level of functionality. If you are looking at what true contact center software is offering, like for example, our partners like Clarity and Computer Talk and Genesys, etc., there's a whole set of functionality that essentially goes beyond it. So if your question would have been like, hey, what can I expect with regards to response groups and call queues and those type of things? Yes, that will come I cannot say, but very soon. It will also be available in Teams, and it will also, of course, be available in Skype for Business Online. But if you're truly talking about workforce management, about outbound dialers, progressive dialers, about all the call management with the supervisor scenarios, etc., we will most likely, not most likely, we will leave that to our partners to fully complete that. However, remember the Tetris analogy. Little by little, functionality will drop in into the base of our product, and we have a lot of work that we have done already conceptualizing of what that could look like in a Teams environment. So let's say help desk type of functionality, I can imagine that will show up in Teams, but the actual contact center will not.
Sure.
I think so, can I add in really quick?
Absolutely.
So I think another part to this is that there's a set of functionality that we're delivering, which is end user functionality, right? There's also a platform component, right? Because Teams is really a platform. You can take other applications and plug in and code to our APIs and do lots of really interesting things with Teams and extend it and actually build your applications right into Teams and have them work right there. So there's an opportunity on the contact center side to be able to extend into Teams too and use the collaborative environment that there is for channels and for chats basically, and also tie into eventually the platform play that we'll have for calling too.
And that's what we are with our partners working on, right? So it's not that there will never be a contact center for Teams or for Skype and Teams together in the new form, but it's not that we will build it ourselves into the full extent that they will build it.
All right. Okay,
Next.
thanks.
What implications does this have to Cloud Connector Edition going forward? I actually had a Microsoft TSP phone one of my clients this morning and tell them to stall a proposed migration that we were doing to Skype Online with hybrid voice and instead implement OPCH.
I think you should take off that question offline, but I think I disagree with the TSP. But it's a more detailed discussion depending on your requirements. So Nikolai is here somewhere. Go talk to him and get his opinion. He's the guy who's really responsible for that. I go all the way to the other end. You have your hand up already for a long time. Please go ahead.
Hi. Can you tell me if Skype for Business 2019 is going to be the final on-prem version? And if so, how long have we got left for support before we move to the cloud?
So I cannot...
Is V next going to be V last?
Unlikely. So unlikely. So just look at the pure numbers, right? So we have tens of millions of users on Skype for Business on-prem. And it will take a long, long, long time before those people are moving. So you will be with the release next year, or maybe, so it will be at least 10 more years that we will be supporting Skype for Business Server. There will be people working on it. So I dare to bet that will not be the last server.
Thank you.
Still, calls and Teams are still in preview. That was the question, and the answer is yes.
Yes.
When will it become GA?
We're working hard on that. So there's going to be a roadmap that's going to be released in a few weeks, and that we'll discuss that in more detail.
But will it be this year or?
Most likely, yes.
Most likely. Is there an open preview program that we could participate in?
Possibly. I can get your information and we can talk about that.
Okay.
So there is a website where you can sign up for all the preview programs. So it's called, I think it's called skypepreview.com. So go there, and then you need to lobby to actually get shortlisted and be included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have a TAP program which allows customers to use our features early on. So these have been in testing for a few months now. Yeah.
Sorry, your mic is not working. I do not know tech. Next.
My company is at the decision point where we can go into Skype for Business Cloud PBX.
Yeah.
But with the onset of Teams, what would literally we can do that in the upcoming weeks or months. But with the introduction of Teams, what would your recommendation be? Hold off a little bit?
No, I think actually so every work that you need to do, if you are willing to take the one thing that customers will have to go through once, and that is that there is a different client. That if you're willing to take that pain, you should go full steam ahead with Skype for Business Online. In the capabilities, in the end, it is the yeah, it's the same.
So to repeat, the introduction of Teams shouldn't be
A
It
reason.
shouldn't be a blocker.
Okay.
No, not at all. And in fact, the Teams is built basically to look at the same architecture that Skype for Business has.
So that's a
And
natural progression then?
It's a totally natural
Okay.
progression.
Yeah.
The phone numbers that you provision your users with will continue to work.
Okay.
And there's
I know that
no
was repeated
configuration.
regularly,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very
It's a
good.
great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Please go ahead.
So my understanding from an earlier session is that with Teams, the multi-region aspect is automatically built in, like regional hosted meetings is automatically in place, which was not the case with Skype for Business Online until recently, and even
Yeah, so
then.
we introduced that indeed recently, that we are able to actually see where the meeting should be hosted and essentially make sure that the people are dialing in into the conference
So
MCU.
my question is there work involved on the admin side to make sure that users are placed in a particular region for that to happen properly?
It actually reads information that you maintain in the admin portal of where your user is configured.
So like usage
And-
locations? And,
Yeah, but be very precise, it needs to be configured in the Skype portal and not in the Office portal. At this very moment, those two data sources, if you configure a user in Office 365 admin portal, it is not synced yet with the Skype for Business. That will change in the new portal. It will all write to the same place, but you need to make sure that the data is correct in the Skype for Business portal.
Okay, thank you.
I go all the way to the other end.
Thank you. Do you plan to add an API function in Skype for Business 2019 to connect to contact center solutions? And if so, which solutions do you will support?
So in Skype for Business Server was your question about,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
there is no deviation from what we have in UCMA at this very moment. So we have this Unified Communications Managed API. That is also the API that will continue to exist in Skype for Business Server 2019.
Thumbs up.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
We have been, hey, Albert, I think
We are going over.
we're over. So we wrap up.
Yes, we will be here for another 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention,
Thank you.
and
Sorry, didn't mean
we will
to plug
take
in.
questions offline. Thank you.